Welcome back or welcome to another episode of the New Levels Coaching Podcast. Remember, we are the coaching podcast that brings you the endurance world, lots of inspiration and education so you can literally go away and run with it. As always, I am your host, Coach Lewis Moses, and co-founder here at NLC. This week is all about the marathon. We look ahead to Valencia Marathon, which takes place this weekend, and we thought there'd be no better guest to talk about the marathon than Team GB Olympian Phil Sesemann. For those of you who remember, Phil tried to chase down the Olympic qualifying time in Valencia last year. We talk all about that and how he went on to achieve the Olympic time in Seville, February 2024. And we also talk about Phil fulfilling his Olympic dream. We go a lot further back as well to when Phil and I used to compete against each other, which seems like many moons ago. We look at Phil's training and we also talk about family life and how Phil's family life has recently changed with a new addition to the Sesemann household. We're absolutely delighted to have Sunto as our headline sponsor for the rest of our podcast throughout 2024. Remember, Sunto stands for adventure and they have been pioneering exploration from right back in 1936. If you haven't already, go back and check out our previous podcast episode where we speak to Yanne from Sunto and we discuss all things zone sense. With that as a bit of an introduction, I'm going to head straight into the conversation with Phil, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Welcome to the podcast for the third time, Phil. So we've had two attempts before, and just to fill our viewers and listeners in, Phil kindly came on Monday, but unfortunately the first 10 minutes of that episode didn't record. So Phil has kindly jumped back on, and he's got his little girl here who's on her first podcast recording because she isn't going down for a nap. But yeah, how is she, Phil? Is she doing well?
Yeah, she's doing great. She's doing really well. So no problem at all. We're third time lucky. Let's give it a go.
Brill. Well, yeah, we'll jump straight into it. And as I say, I'll edit this first bit in, but it's quite nice actually now having the little one present on the podcast. It's a first for us, that's for sure. And it's obviously a first for you as well.
Yeah, definitely is a first for me. So yeah, it'd be nice if she just chilled out and had a little sleep. But she also just wants a bit of a cuddle and a bit of support.
Don't we all? So we'll jump straight back into it, mate, and we'll chat about your inspirations, who your inspirations in the sport, who got you into the sport, or who have you taken inspiration from since you started your running career.
So my inspirations are probably from different periods of my running career, and definitely when I was younger and I was at Blackheath and Bromley Harriers, I was always looking up to, say, Mike Skinner and Scott Overall. I remember many times kind of watching Mike competing at the National Cross, Mike and Scott in teams at Mansfield, and being maybe an under 15 and under 17 and really looking up to them and seeing how they were doing and supporting them and really enjoying that. And obviously then going and seeing what they achieved as kind of international athletes kind of really gave me like something to aim at and just something to see that kind of that's like the level that people can be and that people from Blackheath and Bromley could reach to. And then more in recent years, kind of a lot closer to home would be Emil Caress. Just seeing kind of his level of dedication and application of himself to the sport and being the best that he can be. And he's definitely kind of helped me massively in him kind of being more ambitious and more committed and just being a great training partner and friend. And that's been like really massively inspirational for me to kind of be pushed and pulled along kind of as his kind of trajectory in this sport is just kind of shot upwards, and I feel like he's kind of dragging me along with him a little bit. And that's really been kind of the main one over the last few years.
Nice. And two, hope they don't mind me saying it, Mike and Scott, but both still involved in the sport, two of the older generation, certainly from our perspective. I'm not saying the guys are old because they're not. They've still got a lot of life in them, and they're still very heavily involved in athletics, which is great to see. But then somebody of the younger generation as well, with Emil, who obviously you got to toe the line with in Paris recently, and it was just brilliant to see. Not just that you guys, train and compete together, but genuine friends as well, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, we are. And I'd like to say I'm competing with him, but realistically at the moment I'm not. And I'm not sure whether I ever will again, but yeah, we definitely kind of really work well together as training partners, and yeah, able to kind of seek a lot of guidance from him as well with my running, and that's been massively helpful, and it just keeps me like really honest, just seeing how hard he works, and uh, like my partner, like as much as she prefers that I don't go away on training camps, she kind of really pushes me to go away with a meal and as much as possible, because she knows that it just changes my mentality completely each time I go, and yeah, there's just a lot to be kind of taken from that.
Amazing. Well, they say, we are the product of those we surround ourselves with. So something true to be said to that for sure. And yeah, fair play to the partner as well for letting you go off around the world. And I know it's all part of the success that we see from people where they have that support network. So you clearly have a good support network around you. Some amazing performances over the last few years, Phil, and I'm conscious that hasn't come of chance, and it's certainly taken a long time to get to that point. But some of our viewers and listeners won't be familiar with your backstory either, so I thought that's where we'll start, and we'll connect the dots from our first recording to this recording. So if you can give them a bit of an insight into how you got into the sport, what things looked like when you did, and how you progressed from there into maybe triathlon, which we touched upon in the first recording, and then obviously into the marathon eventually.
Yeah, sure. So I'm 32 years old. I'm based up in Leeds, but originally from Southeast London. I started running when I was 9, 10, 11 years old, just at primary school cross country races. At those younger ages, I was actually primarily a swimmer at Beckenham Swimming Club, and swimming pretty competitively. I made the national championships at 11 years old, didn't at 12 years old. But I was, yeah, relatively good at swimming, but there was definitely a lot of guys and girls who were better. Um, at that time, the aerobic element of all of that training kind of really gave me a lot of fitness. So actually, the primary school cross country races that I did and the kind of early secondary school races that I did went relatively well, just because of all that swimming background. So I kind of was enjoying my running a lot more, and I decided to focus on my running a lot more and drop down a squad and take it less seriously on the swimming. And lo and behold, overall training volumes dropped significantly, just because you can't run that much at such a young age. And actually, my running got worse. And this actually happened like probably 2 or 3 times. I would yo-yo up and down the squads in the swimming club, and a lot of kind of appreciation of those coaches allowing me to do that. Pretty much my running would go worse, so I'd go back up a squad in swimming, take it more seriously, compete again in swimming, and running would go better again. I'd be like, well, this is much more fun. I'd take it more seriously, drop down a squad in swimming, and running would go worse again. And this kind of happened, yeah, all the way up until really I was like 18. Um, so yeah, I think probably best results from a running perspective was like a fourth at the National Cross in under 15 in 2008 on a very muddy Alton Towers. I think a big thing was that it was only 3,000 meters rather than 4.5, which kind of 4.5K at the intercounties a few weeks later, and I was 46th in the same age group. So the shorter distances at that age, actually, I was faring a lot better at. I just didn't have the aerobic development of years and years of high volume training that it would come to be shown that I kind of need. Um, and then I made the English schools final at 1500 twice in my last 2 years of school. Didn't make English schools before that, but was quite proud of those results, and really pleased with that. And that kind of led me into kind of coming up to Leeds to study medicine. Um, and I was always fully aware I had 6 years at university, and I wanted to kind of make the most of that. So I always saw it as I would have like a year off and kind of socialize, go out a lot, ski trips, holidays, Camp America, lots of different experiences that I hadn't really had. And then I would have 5 years at university to kind of focus on my sport again. And the initial kind of plan was to try and become a triathlete. With my swimming background, and I was a big fan of cycling, had done a little bit in the past, and with the running kind of talent that I had, I thought let's give this a go, and where better place to do that than Leeds. with the Brownlees and the triathlon centre here, and I gave it a pretty good go. But I'll be really honest, kind of cycling at 6:30 a.m. in the winter up to the swimming pool and going swimming, and then going out at the only times in the week when you had time off lectures as a second year medical student to go out on the bike. It made it pretty tough. And while swimming was good, and my running was going better again, I was PBing over the distances 1500, 5000. I still had some pretty terrible results. I think I was about 70th at the National Cross as a junior that year, and the junior men's age group isn't usually the deepest field, and especially kind of a Sunderland National Cross. That wasn't the best result really. But I stuck at it, and as the running was going better again due to the high volume of training, I knew that was what I was enjoying the most, and that's what I wanted to focus on. So I was quite quick to kind of enter my third year and stop the triathlon and go all in on the running again.
Nice. God, I remember Sunderland National Cross. And yeah, our paths obviously started to cross over numerous distances, including cross-country track, particularly that 3K that you mentioned, that you were a bit of a specialist at eventually, but clearly good at it from a young age as well. But fascinating how, your background started with like the swimming and the running, and you realize you couldn't really combine them, and then you realize you couldn't really combine maybe the triathlon and the running as well, and then things led fully to running. So at that point, did you then say, right, you know what, actually I'm not going to really cross train, I'm just going to focus on the running? And did the cycling and the swimming then drop out?
So initially I dropped both out pretty quickly. Started running kind of 50, 55, 60-mile weeks. Battled shin splints for the first few months, and ended up finishing, I think, 45th at the Liverpool Cross that November, and in the process tearing my plantar fascia, and not running for 10, 11 months after that. So that was pretty tough. I then actually spent a lot of time on the bike, had a lot more time to devote to that, especially the following summer, and actually kind of got all right at the bike. So ended up finishing like 15th in the Bucks cycling hill climb, which was a pretty good result. I was quite proud of that one. So yeah, it definitely was something that I then realised I needed to keep in an element of cross training, and that probably lasted for 2 or 3 years, where that was still kind of part of the training program. But it was a case of just increasing running volumes each season, each year, and reducing cross training to the point where now it's just running. I don't do any cross training whatsoever.
Amazing. Yeah, it shows, doesn't it? If you just kind of go to one discipline quite quickly, then issues do arise. And I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that. But that's a brilliant backdrop, and it kind of paints that picture and the story of how you got to where you got to with the running. And in that time, Phil, what I am amazed at is you've also got your little daughter off to sleep, which is incredible. And that sets us up nicely to piece the podcast together from where we were on Monday to where we are now. So yeah, again, thanks for coming on to make up that. We had a bit of an issue with the recording, but you've so eloquently put it all together, and in the same time, you've managed to get your daughter to sleep. So you're gonna get major dad points here, by the way, from all our viewers and listeners. Amazing. So yeah, thanks for that, mate. And I just appreciate you coming on and joining us again.
No problem.
Before we crack on with part 2 of the pod, I just wanted to say a massive thank you to Sunto, who are sponsoring this episode of the NLC podcast and the remaining episodes in 2024. I have been loving my new Sunto watch, in particular using Zone Sense, which I spoke a lot about on the last podcast episode with Yanne. So if you haven't checked that out already, why not go back and listen to episode 38 and find out more about Zone Sense. But this weekend I was in the lakes, and for anybody who does train the lakes on the fells and the mountains will know that your map feature comes in very handy. And the map feature on the Sunto watch is far better than my previous watch, so a big thanks to Sunto for providing me with a new watch, which I'm making full use of out on the fells and in the mountains. I know Sunto have an amazing Black Friday deal on at the minute, so why not head over to the Sunto website and see what offers they've got on, whether you're treating yourself now or maybe for the Christmas period. Be sure to check out not just their watches but their accessories as well, including their amazing headphones. Okay, let's get straight back into the pod. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. Let's head over for part 2.
gave myself like 1 year where I said I'm going to kind of live the student experience. I'm going to go out with my flatmates 2 nights, 3 nights a week. I'm going to go on ski trips. I'm going to go to Camp America for the summer, and um, athletics or swimming was always going to be at the back of my mind, rather than kind of just trying to be a student and enjoy myself. Kind of always aware that I had 6 years at university doing a medical degree, so I could afford to do that, and still get a good amount of time training and do that. And after that, decided I'm going to give triathlon a go. I had a road bike. I'd enjoyed my cycling in my final year of school, and with a swimming background as well, I thought maybe I could be pretty good at this. Gave it a go in Leeds because that's where the brownies are and that's where triathlon centre is, and thought if you're going to be anywhere to do it, this is the place to do it. And it went okay. I just really struggled to get the cycling legs under me, just because I wasn't putting enough time into it. Just because I just didn't have it. I was doing a second year of my medical degree. It's quite time consuming, and still trying to have a bit of a social life as well. And it just wasn't really working. So I did do a couple races. I think I was maybe 14th, 13th in the Bucks short course triathlon, which was not bad. There's some pretty good athletes around that level. And then the running started going well that year, just with all the aerobic training, and just decided to go all in on that. And kind of, I haven't really kind of looked back from there really. Just kind of, I kind of felt like because I'd missed that year of training where I'd been kind of going out and socializing, and I kind of always looked at kind of the level that I was running at for the next few years, and would see kind of maybe if I was out of the under 23 age group, I would kind of always pretend to myself that actually that was the level that, like, where my training age was. So I kind of felt as long as I was kind of competitive with those top guys in that age group, then I was probably doing pretty well. And that's where I kind of always got this idea that actually I am pretty talented at this. And I know if I work hard enough for long enough, I will end up kind of with a GB vest for something at some point. And that for me was like the real big kind of motivation, the real big drive to kind of continue doing it and kind of go through some poor results and go through some good results, and just still do it until I kind of got a GB vest at 26 years old. And at that point I was still kind of doing all the track and a little bit of road stuff in the winter. And that was what I was enjoying doing, and probably always knew that I was probably better at the longer stuff, but was very much enjoying 1500 meter racing in the summer and 3000 meter indoor racing and doing that. So after that, kind of 29 years old, stepped up to the marathon, and that's the day job now, and that's what I'm focusing on.
Nice. Well, that's a really good insight, and actually, even opens my eyes a little bit to that journey, because although we may have competed against each other, which we'll go on to in a second, you sometimes don't know the full backstory, and when you get it, it really does open your eyes. But what's always struck me about you, Phil, is you were somebody in the sport who I looked at who thought this person's in it for the long game and not the short game. You know, you see some people and you can almost get a sense from them that they just want results tomorrow. And you never struck me as that type of person. It was interesting hearing your thought process behind that, even looking down the age groups and saying, well, actually, you know what, I took a bit of time out, so I'm judging myself on those people and not necessarily against the people I'm at now. That's a really nice insight. And actually, I think a lot of people can take something from that, but also looking at, like, you know, your strengths and where you've developed over the years, and realize that you had aerobic development from other sports, but it might take a little bit more time with the running as you build that up. But even having the kind of the foresight to think, oh, maybe the longer distances is where I'm more suited at, because a lot of people would have probably thought that you were more of a middle distance and would have made a good 5K and 10K runner, because I remember competing against you over 1500 meters, the mile, the 3K, and eventually the 5K. I think I was in the race where you debuted in your 5K at Morton Games. I think that was your 5K track debut.
No, I'd actually raced earlier that season at Sport City. And yeah,
Right,
I had
okay.
actually raced the year that I was doing the triathlon and done a few fives as well that year. But that was
Nice.
that's actually the fastest I've ran in non-carbon shoes, even, because I think my PBs
Interesting.
are from wearing carbon shoes before they were banned on the track. So that was at Walton Games. Yeah,
Right,
so
okay.
I haven't been under 1350 in non-carbon. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, yeah, we were both in that race together. I remember it well, and I remember thinking, "Oh, Phil's going to make a cracking 5K runner." But the jump to marathon came pretty quickly. But one thing I do remember as well, even when you were in the middle distance, I remember thinking, "Oh, he does seem to like the longer stuff." As in, like, I always remember you saying like you did long training runs, especially like the longer run was typically a little bit longer than what you'd expect from some of the speedier middle distance athletes. Was that something you were just naturally pretty good at, or do you just enjoy being out there for a longer
Yeah,
time?
I just enjoyed it, and I definitely kind of
Mm.
it motivated me. I remember like wanting to do a 20 miler for the first time and being like really excited about trying to do 20 miles in under 2 hours. And going out and doing these long runs, 17 miles at 540s or 535s, and kind of really burying myself on a Sunday just out on my own, and really enjoying that. And that wasn't really with the intention of being a marathon runner. That was just with the intention of, oh, I just was enjoying this. This is fun. I want to see like how far I can run and how fast I can run. And it was a point kind of maybe around 26, 27, speaking to my coach, and we sat down and did one of these individual athlete plans, these IAPs you have to do when you're in kind of like a talent program or however it is. And Hendo, my coach Andrew Henderson, wrote like, I have see you being like a marathon runner, and I was like, well, what are you talking about, kind of thing. Like, we've never spoke about the marathon at all. And I did remember I had like a list of short-term, medium, and long-term goals, and on the long-term goals was like a sub 218 marathon, something like that. And there was also get a GB vest, and there was run under 340 for 1500, get the club record. There was a few, and the marathon was just 218. And my coach was like, "No, you'll be a marathon runner." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He was like, "Well, kind of similar to maybe Johnny Mellor. Like, he's done the short stuff on the track and slowly stepped himself up, and now he's a fully fledged marathon runner." And I wasn't really, convinced. And then I did bigger and bigger mileage weeks. I did bigger long runs. They went well, and I started to kind of get the bug as well. And since I kind of debuted 3 years ago, I kind of haven't really looked back.
Yeah, you not look back and took to it pretty well as well. I think it must be said. You never quite know how people are going to respond when they go up to the marathon distance, especially from your background. When, like you say, there are a few examples of people who come from the track and they transition really well. But there's also a couple of examples where people in the sport expect people to transition really well, and it maybe doesn't go according to plan. So I was always intrigued when I saw you make that step. But I think one thing that stood out to me was, if somebody loves doing what they do, they're more likely to have success. I always chat to the athletes we coach about, and it almost annoys me a little bit when they're like, "Oh, I don't really like going on long runs, but I want to target a marathon." And I'm thinking, well, why do you want to target a marathon if you don't enjoy the long runs? Like, surely if you enjoy something, you're going to get a little bit more success from it, or your chances are higher. That's how I see it. I don't know if you have a similar view to that.
I honestly think that's like the number one thing. Like, I absolutely
Mm.
love my running. I love training. I love going out for a run with the boys, taking my dogs out and running with them, and that's the main thing for me. Like, if being able to you're going to have bad race results all the time.
Yeah.
But just knowing that that's not what you're doing it for, like, you need to be motivated and you want the outcome and you want to race well. But you need to be able to accept that it's not always going to go well, but you must just love running in order to kind of actually endure those rubbish results and get through those seasons that just aren't clicking for whatever reason, and just enjoy going out and running. And I speak to some of the younger athletes who kind of they don't really enjoy going out for a run. They like sessions, they like racing, but they don't enjoy going out for a run. And you just say to them, well, you're probably not going to last in this for the long term, because it's really crap this when you get injured and when you're not racing well and you're not getting the results you want. So if you're not enjoying like the just day to day of going out with your mates and or your dogs or whatever, then it's going to be really hard to really stick at this. So yeah, I'd honestly say that's the number one thing, to really stay doing this. And everyone knows that consistency is kind of the key to improvement.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I was chatting to Tomo. Well, actually, I was at a camp where Tomo was chatting recently, and he said, "Oh, I always had this view that when I stopped running, eventually I'd be broken. I wouldn't run anymore." And you slowly realize, even in retirement, after 2 or 3 weeks of putting your feet up and eating what you want and drinking what you want, that actually you quite miss it, and you miss the routine, and you miss going out. And I think that was apparent for me when I went into coaching. Was I always want to run to some degree because I love it and I love getting out. And I think you've got to have some element of that in order to be successful, especially over the longer distances where it's not just about being out, it's about accumulating miles and time on your feet. And it's especially if you want to be good at that distance. A lot of people talk about marathon training and they almost say, oh, well, yeah, I can get away with this. And I think to myself, well, if you're trying to get away with something, it's probably not the best approach to take to it. I imagine what goes through your mind is something like, what can I do to be the best I possibly can, no matter what it is? And what do I need to do in order to be the best I possibly can?
Yeah, 100%. It's just, if you told me I had to run 200 mile a week to be at my best at a marathon, I'd do it. Like I would just do what I needed to do, what I believed and my coach believed was going to make me race my best. So yeah, you have to enjoy it. But you also have to be willing to, if you want to do really well, you have to be willing just to push and just do everything that you can to kind of reach those top levels. Because if you take shortcuts like each day, like the cumulative effect of that is actually massive at the end of 5 years, 6 years, 7 years of training.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good message is like, if you can keep that consistency, as you said earlier, and that accumulation of training. We sat in lucky enough to sit in a talk with yourself and your coach in Leeds, and I remember you saying like, it's not that my training's got that much better over the years, it's that it's just kept going and I've just kept piecing it together, building block on block on block, and as a result of that, see those improvements. I'm intrigued to know what it did look like at the start though, Phil. So as you progressed from, say, the track and the road, certainly over that 3K, 5K distance, which is where we used to compete, up towards the marathon and your first one, what were the big changes you made, and what was the plan? What was that discussion like with your coach to say, right, we're going to go to the marathon and this is how we're going to do it, and these are the things we might need to change and think about as we prepare for that first one?
Yeah, so we kind of I went to the marathon after a race at the European Indoors in March 2021. Kind of trained really well going into the summer that year, and that was an Olympic year as well. So I kind of had these wild ambitions of just shoot for like the Olympic times, or really get as close to kind of being there as possible. I didn't really believe I could run those times, but my training was going. I was doing track sessions that I can't do now, kind of thing, like really good track sessions.
Right,
But I kind of opened my season. I did a 3K in Birmingham in like 7:58 or something. And then I went and ran outside 14 minutes at Trafford in the BMC. And I just thought, what on earth am I doing? Kind of thing. Like this has gone terribly. And training continued to go well, like good track stuff, hard like 4x2K and 20 times 400 off a minute, just hard stuff, and good mileage as well. Long runs weren't particularly quick, but I had got a camper van, so I was doing a lot of kind of 3 hour long runs and in the peaks and on hills, kind of messing around a little bit. And I basically just raced rubbish that season. Got ill just before the 10,000 meter champs. So just thought, you know what, let's just leave this season, just forget about it. It's 17 weeks till London Marathon. Like, let's just focus on that. And that summer was kind of spent in the camper van and on holiday, but just running 120 miles every week, and pretty much nailing a hard long run every week. Just somewhere, wherever I was, I'll just find a way of just hitting a long run pretty hard. And that'd be up to 24 miles, maybe even a little bit further. at least kind of 20 most weeks. And then session wise, probably one or two other sessions, often just one. And that was probably the big difference. Just really kind of pulling back on frequency of intensity, and it would just be pretty much 2 hard efforts a week, a long run, a session on the track. And then the rest of the training was just easy mileage and just trying to make sure I hit 120 and getting up a little bit higher as well. And actually kind of with the even though the track performances were poor, the fitness was still pretty good that year. So I was able to do some pretty good stuff that year. And that's why I kind of feel like, I was able to kind of go into that first London Marathon in October 2021 with quite a lot of confidence, having done some pretty decent long runs up in Leeds, and knew that was going to go pretty well. So that's kind of where it's changed. And then probably since then, it's just kind of progressed, just every part of it, maybe a little bit more mileage, more intense sessions, maybe slightly faster, easier runs at points, and just more and more of the same, really. So kind of, rather than having done 10 long runs, I've probably now done 100 long runs above 20 miles. So that all helps.
Yeah, those building blocks that we mentioned. A couple of things I'm going to take from that, though. I'm going to kind of put my coach's hat on in a second, because there was a couple of key things you said in there which I really liked. But also just to backtrack to 2021, because a lot of people will think, well, London Marathon October, if we remember, coming out of COVID, it was a change and they brought London Marathon forwards, and it was the only time they ran it in October. It's obviously back in April now, but that was your debut, wasn't it, that year, in the October of that year? Was that, I'm trying to recap here, was that the Dr. Phil year? Was that when they kind of ran with that story when you were the I thought it was, and you went headline news, didn't you?
I mean, it was pretty good. I knew that it was an Olympic year, so I knew the top British marathon runners wouldn't be there. So your Callum, Tomo, and Ben were your best guys that year, and they weren't going to be there. So I definitely knew there was an opportunity, if you're in good shape, to kind of be first Brit, like Josh Griffiths was a couple of years before that, and Johnny Mello maybe the year before on the closed loop course. So I knew that there was an opportunity there to, if things went well, and things went really well, and I got a kind of 7th place finish, and got my 15 minutes of fame afterwards, and that's kind of really kind of like catalyzed this like marathon career, really, which is so I do think there's an element of luck, but you've also got to like be strategic and create your own luck, and look at that and say, well, that's like London Marathon, that's the year to target that. I chat to guys now who are 5k 10k runners, and they're thinking about debuting in their marathon, and there's maybe someone's read Charlie Spedding's autobiography, which will tell you to go and do a small marathon at Houston and don't do like this massive London Marathon. But what you've got to remember is you have a good one at London Marathon, that opens a lot of doors. And it's an amazing day as well, so that can be really motivating. So you have to kind of weigh up those things, and it definitely is an opportunity that you can take.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the coaching points I wanted to touch on, so I'm glad you have as well, because I think a lot of people don't spend enough time mapping out and planning long term. I think they just jump from goal to goal, and they sometimes even follow the trends of what everyone else is doing. So they get caught up in, we're just going to go there and do that. But actually mapping that out and seeing opportunities and looking at where you might potentially run your best, and also looking for opportunities that do open up because other people might not be there, is a great example from that. And then you made a really good point about, it wasn't as though you were in bad shape, you just weren't racing very well, but actually the training was there, so there was a really good base to build from as well. It wasn't like you were starting from scratch and you were already doing long runs and things in the process. But the one thing I really wanted to touch on, which was the frequency of the intensity, because I think this is where a lot of people at any level, they don't fall short in it, they almost overdo it. And I think it's just a bit of understanding around, if mileage is going to increase, if volume is going to increase so much as they go up a distance, something has to change for me. Something has to be pegged back. And in this case, you decided to drop the intensity a little bit, certainly the frequency of that intensity. Do you want to give people a bit of an insight into how that looks? You mentioned you did one session in the week, a lot of easy running and a long run, which was pretty hard. And I imagine the coaching behind that, or certainly your philosophy behind that, will be the cost of that long run is so much. I need to now recover and not go again for a period of time. But what did the old training used to look like before that? So what would a typical week look like for you before you went into that one session and big long run?
Yeah, it would probably look like Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Tuesday be on the track, maybe 6, 7, 8K of volume. Thursday would be like tempo, which might go up to 9-mile progression. It might be 4-mile, 3x1 mile kind of tempo, relatively quick. And then Saturday, especially in the summer, would be pretty aggressive, kind of maybe 3K, 4K of volume, pretty short recoveries or big recoveries between sets, and pretty fast, really kind of 1500 meter pace even. And then the long run would be, it wouldn't be as intense, but I'd just still try and get good volume in. And that was kind of what I did for years and years. And that definitely works at the short stuff, especially when your mileage, your total volume is lower. You can afford to do a bit more. And I'll argue you need to do a bit more intensity, because you can't run hard twice a week and only run 50 miles and expect to compete with guys who are running hard twice a week but running 120 miles. It's just not going to happen, is it? You're going to lose that race every day. You can do a bit more. But as I kind of transition to those longer distances, I definitely tried, and Coach and I definitely tried to keep the frequency there. But we just quickly learned that you just can't, and you have to pull it back. And to be honest, we're still learning. There's times where I'll do sessions and we'll just realize that, we've overcooked it there a little bit. We should have just given it an extra day. That happens all the time, but you just have to kind of adjust and try and learn from those mistakes and try not to do them again.
Yeah, some really good points here. I think a lot of people take a lot away from this, because I think firstly, you've demonstrated that there's more than one training model, and training models are very different for different distances. Yeah. Yes, those distances might all be aerobic, but the intensity that you train at has to be a lot different, or certainly can be a lot different. But the other thing I think, which is a really good message here, is we shouldn't just look at what people do and assume it's going to work for us as well. And I think some people fall into that trap where they read autobiographies or they see training plans that people have done. The classic one at the minute is it works for Jakob Ingebrigtsen, so we're all going to do double threshold. That seems to be the go-to, but it's often built up over time. And I think what's clever about what you and Hendo did was that you pulled it back and you learned, but then you've slowly added things back in. So like that intensity has come back. And I know from speaking to you at Leeds, you said about some of the easy runs maybe became steady runs, and then eventually realized those steadies weren't maybe quick enough, and those steady runs become a little bit quicker too. And you use physiology to help with that. So I think you've almost pulled it back, but then have slowly progressed back. But that does take time, doesn't it?
It takes ages. And the problem is when you're fit, you can handle quite a lot of training and you can run pretty hard pretty frequently, but it will catch up with you. And you'll just knacker yourself. We kind of followed. So for London Marathon in 2023, I'd come off a camp in Kenya in January, and then I had about a 10-week block at home and pretty much trained with Josh Dickinson in Leeds throughout the entire thing. And we would do one hard track session a week, around 20k of volume. We would do a hard long run on a Friday and then a steady long run on a Sunday. So the steady might be 520s to 530s. The hard one might be 505s or even a little bit quicker, often with like on-off segments. And the track session would be fairly kind of half marathon-ish pace kind of thing, maybe even a bit quicker for that volume. And I got to the third week before the race and I had the best week's training in my life. I had 3 amazing sessions. 2 amazing sessions and then a really good long run that I just pushed even harder. And I was like, I've done 130 weeks here. I'm in absolutely amazing shape. And then obviously I felt completely terrible through the entire 2-week taper. And you think, oh, that's because of the taper, but there's no real reason that you should feel awful. It's because I just ramped things up so much in that 1 week that it just took 10 days to recover from. So yeah, you always have to just kind of like look at those lessons and just think, no, I don't need to prove my fitness. Like I just need to do the work and I'll come good by the time the race comes around.
Yeah, some good lessons there. And I sometimes think people think, oh, well, the taper's coming, so I can train harder, I can go harder. But often if you carry fatigue into that taper, sometimes there's no recovering. That's why training plans are carefully designed. So yeah, again, some really wise words and good lessons, which you've learned from and probably continue to learn from to this day, which is also, I guess, quite humbling to hear that yourself and your coach say, look, we're still learning. You echoed that message in Leeds, which I thought was great. You had a very open relationship, and it seemed like you input quite a lot on the training as well, which was really nice to hear. Is that still how it works, Phil? Do you have quite a big input on the training with Hendo?
Definitely. Yeah, I will kind of come with him with the plan that I have the idea of doing, and we'll discuss it, we'll talk through it. We'll have ideas. Like today I rang up and I said, my calves are in bits because I did an indoor session on Saturday, so I think I've got some DOMs, and should we push tomorrow's session back? And we kind of settled on, actually, let's just ease off the miles this evening and do a lot less, and then hopefully that way I'll be fresh enough to kind of stick to the days that we've set. And it's just a very much kind of almost daily dialogue, just to work out what's best. And Hendo's probably more, if anything, he's a big sounding board, and an advisor. And I think he's equipped me with that kind of understanding and knowledge over the years of my own running, through working together for so long, that we both know kind of when I need to do certain things and when we need to push and when we need to pull back.
I think that's brilliant coaching in itself. It's like the athlete first approach, and listening and adapting on the fly. And people think the best coaches in the world just write this plan and athletes just follow it, but often the best coaches in the world are the ones who are listening and adapting and making smart decisions within the week to adjust things. So I think that's really good to hear.
So when we were out in Italy this summer, me and Emil, and Renato was training, he would just write kind of 2 or 3 days of training at a time. And he'd have all these ideas, like we were going to do this certain tempo, we we're going to do this uphill run, and and they didn't happen. It was just, everything was just adapting, like day after day. Just, how do you feel? Okay, let's do this then. That's what's needed. And I think that's why it went so well for him. He kind of had his coach there for 7 weeks, just choosing and modifying almost daily, rather than this kind of like, this is the marathon block, this is what we have to do to be ready for the marathon. It was all just very kind of relaxed and flexible.
Fascinating to hear. And I know that's a lot easier in that elite environment, but I listened to a podcast not long ago where a coach said, I used to plan 6 weeks at a time, then I went to 4 weeks, now that I'm at 2 weeks. And he said, I find myself even like a week at a time now. I know generally what that block needs to look like, but I'm adapting things as we go. We were in the Lake District at the weekend and we couldn't run on the Saturday, and bless Gemma, she was having a bit of a hissy fit because it was just unrunnable. You tried and it was like, this is actually dangerous now, so let's just go home. And I said, you know what, we'll turn the long run tomorrow into a long steady, so we'll just add a bit of steady in there. And had a great long run on the Sunday, and then it's like all the problems are solved. But I appreciate that's a lot harder for people to do who maybe don't have their coach with them all the time. But it does still kind of emphasize the same point that you don't have to necessarily stick to a training plan 100% in order to get results. You can be flexible with that, and I think everybody should be flexible with it. I'm sure in your training blocks where you've got 90% of the work done and you think, actually, that's good enough.
100%. So although I mean, I like to tick things off, and I like the nice.
We all do.
I'm a little bit less relaxed about that. And like when we were in Italy, like there was 1 or 2 sessions, Emil had like a dicky belly and he couldn't finish the session, and Renato just wasn't bothered in the slightest. He didn't say like, oh, you need to do this tonight to make up for it or that. He just wasn't bothered, and that actually gave Emil a lot of confidence. He was like, well, if he was pissed off or stressed about it, then I would be. But the fact that he just was like, all right, cool, you only did 12 out of 20k, fine, and see you on Wednesday for the next session. That kind of gave him a lot of relieved all that stress for him and stuff. So it's very kind of important for a coach to kind of be there like day in, day out, really, and have that dialogue going back and forth.
Yeah, and I think it's twofold from that for me as I look at it from a coach. I think it's so clever because I think, firstly, there's the physical side, and you think, well, I want my athlete to be ready for the next session. So I don't want them to overdo it today when they're clearly not right. So I'm not going to give them anything else because I want them to be ready to come prepared for the next session. But then there's the mental side of it, which I think is so clever because you say to them, no, you're all good. And like almost saying, I know you're in great shape. Don't worry about it. And that must fill the athlete with confidence because they're going, oh, they don't feel like I need to do much more. Like they must think I'm ready. They must think I'm good. And as you say, it almost takes the stress away from the athlete. But I also get the side of it as well, because I would have fallen into that category at certain times. And you probably do, Phil. And I know a lot of athletes I coach do. They just want to see green on their plan. They want to see it go green. And there's nothing wrong with that either, is there? Like that must be said. We're not saying here, oh, just skip all your training and you can be great. We're saying actually there's times when you might need to rethink things and readjust.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, you still need to do a lot of training and you need to train hard. But just every now and again, if it's not completely perfect on your training peaks, then that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, I'm keen to look at that progression from London. So obviously debut went really well, and you kind of catapulted your way into marathon stardom, particularly here in the UK. And you were doing that whilst working, and that was kind of highlighted from the press. But that was 2021, and the Olympics had just passed. And then the next Olympics obviously was going to be 2024, which is the one that we've just seen. Did you believe from that moment on that you could potentially make the next Olympics? And was that then a conscious decision to say, you know what, I'm all in now, and actually I want to make this a bit of a living. There's a few doors opened up here. I'm now all in to try and make Paris 2024.
Yeah, I was definitely all in. At that point, for Tokyo, the time was 2:11:30. So when I ran 2:12:58 and kind of felt like actually that wasn't the strongest of performances that day physically, I did feel like I could run a 2:11:30 for sure at some point. So yeah, I definitely felt like I'm in the running for the next Olympics and I want to be shooting for that. Obviously, maybe a year and a half later or a year or so when the time came out and it was 2:08:10 and the long 3.5 minutes off, you do start to kind of second guess yourself and you start to look at that and think, Jesus, that is really quick kind of thing. And that definitely changed things slightly, and maybe that belief wasn't 100% there. But I kind of had that year of 2021 and come to 2022 and raced at the European Champs and felt I'd run 2:15 there on a hot day in the summer in Munich and felt like that was like an okay performance. It was probably better than my previous one at the London Marathon, and definitely just felt like I was enjoying this marathon training and wanted to kind of go at it even further. And after that, kind of ran 6 or 7 weeks later at the London Marathon again and ran a 2:12:10, which was for 10th place, and was really pleased to kind of have progressed and ran a PB and off such a short build up. And in that build up, I'd had COVID and I'd kind of lost an extra week of training, and with it being such a short back to back, that was like really reassuring that, okay, even on a day where I don't think my training's been perfect, I can still pull out an okay performance. So definitely from then I was starting to think, yeah, the Olympics could maybe happen. But it was still like a long way off and I had 4 minutes to kind of make up. And from there, it was all about being quite strategic with kind of camps and just continuing to progress. Unfortunately, I was able to just reduce my hours working as a doctor to the point where in September 2023, I gave up my license and no longer work as a doctor. So that was a real kind of, for me, that was a big, like, I'm all in now. That's it kind of thing. Like, no excuses. I'm not going to look back in 10, 15 years time and say, I should have done this or I could have done that. I was just going to be all in and just go for it. And yeah, fortunately, it did pay off.
Yeah, well, to use a Strava term, kudos to you for doing that, and that is a big step. I think a lot of people would naturally worry about that because, like you say, they're giving up a job, they're giving up a career to really go for it. But I imagine with you and knowing you a little bit to say that you're the type of personality that even if it didn't pay off, you wouldn't have regretted that decision because it was the right decision to make at that time to really go for it.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I've not once have I kind of regretted making that decision. And obviously, it did pay off, and I did get what I wanted to achieve. But it was just because this is what I've always been passionate about. This is what I've always loved doing. I was never sat at home reading medical textbooks for fun. I was never looking at YouTube with medical videos. It was always running. I was on Let's Run. I was on Flow Track. Like, that's what I enjoyed doing. So I just wanted to be kind of all in on that.
And you've got your whole life to work, right? You only get one shot at the Olympics and what you're doing, so why not go all in?
Exactly.
Yeah. So September 2023, you go full time, and then I'm going to go on to Valencia Marathon because we were out there last year in 2023, December, for those of you who aren't familiar with Valencia, and we're intentionally recording this podcast before Valencia 2024. And yeah, we got to Valencia, and I remember you were doing like a bit of a YouTube series as well, if I remember rightly, with Lloyd.
Yeah, with Trackster and Chorus. They'd got a few videos going with that.
Yeah, and yeah, it kind of sparked a bit of interest, certainly from a British perspective. And but I remember hearing that despite you being the standard you were, because of the depth at Valencia, like you might not even get your drinks on the table at one point. Was that true?
No, I was always getting my drinks. Yeah, I was always good. I may not have got the shoes from Adidas, but I did in the end. So that was pretty good.
Right. So yeah, I mean, it kind of goes to show the depth there, though, doesn't it? Where we're looking at, top 10 at London Marathon, and you're going into Valencia, and I'd imagine in your head you're thinking, if I can finish in the top 50 here, I'm going to have an unbelievable day because it is just absolutely stacked.
Yeah, it was really stacked, and there's a lot of people, because the time was so quick for the Olympics. Everyone who wanted to go had to chase these kind of Spanish summer marathons or Spanish winter marathons where it's going to be cool. You got these flat, fast roads. So you knew that the depth was going to be there. And that was a big thing for me because the 3 London marathons that I had raced at, I'd won my group. I'd been the strongest out of my group. So I pretty much ran the final kind of 10K in each of those solo, except for the April 2023 one where the pacemaker stayed until 35. So I knew that, there was time to gain from that. I knew I'd been to altitude 3 times that summer to prepare, and I knew my training that autumn going into Valencia was the best I'd ever done. Mileage was higher, long runs were better. I really felt like I could do the time. So that's why it was pretty rough when I didn't, but still satisfied with kind of a decent PB there.
Yeah, so it was a bit of bittersweet. Obviously, I was out on course tracking it. I think a lot of people were following, like genuinely, whether they were there or at home. It seemed like quite a big thing that we had a couple of guys going for the Olympic standard, and you were one of those. And it was agonizingly close. The time was 2:08:10. And if you want to kind of enlighten the listeners as to how close you got to that time on the day.
I was 38 seconds off in the end, so I was 2:08:48, and it was pretty much around like 32, 33K where I could just feel that like my legs weren't quite ready to kind of keep pushing on. And I saw this group just keep pressing away from me, of the guys that I'd been running with. And just like, that was a distinct kind of feeling of they're the guys who were going to run the time, and they were the guys who did. And I was one of the ones who kind of just weren't able to do it that day.
A couple of things from that, though. I think firstly, it shows incredible mental strength to continue to run to the line, knowing that time has gone, and still pushing yourself, because you're on for a PB, right? And you're on for a huge time. And that may seem to, the external world, that's just motivation in itself. But when you put so much into it and you know the time's so close, it would be easy for the mind to shut down and the body to follow, and then things just to fall apart. So you obviously still ran well, and it was a big PB. And again, just enlighten the audience into how much you took off your PB on that day from the
I
previous
think it was
PB.
about 95 seconds. So it was a decent PB, and I mean, to be honest, once that goal does go, it does start getting very hard. I mean, I still, it'd be fair to say I didn't try as hard at Valencia as I did at Seville, because I knew that it wasn't touch and go. I knew that time wasn't happening that day. And I did think I was probably going to run around 2:8:30 with a few K to go, and just kept getting a bit slower. And just was like, all right, at least if it's under 2:9, then that's all right then, kind of. So yeah, you could say I was running it in, but still running it in with the knowledge that I was about to run a pretty decent time as well still.
Yeah, and I guess the hope of actually that wasn't a million miles away either. That was like really close. You were nearly there, and yeah, you mentioned Seville already. Seville, for those who don't know, is in February, so February 2024, earlier this year, but obviously fell after Valencia. And word quickly came out that you were going to have another crack at the time, 2:8:10 in Seville. I guess fast forward the previous year, you'd had a quick turnaround between two marathons, so there was a bit of experience there. You'd obviously got ill in the build up to that, but were you confident that you could recover and go again? It was a tight turnaround, and it was a huge ask.
I wasn't confident, but I knew that was the best option for me. The other option was that you go and you give it a go at London Marathon, but I know that the course, the conditions may not be as good at the London Marathon, and I know that the London Marathon is the absolute last option. So I just thought, you know what, like the shape is good. I was a 2:10 guy. I needed to run 2:8:10. I'm now a 2:8 guy. It's a lot closer. Like mentally, that's a big jump to take over 2 minutes off your time, and now I only need to take 38 seconds off. It's on a great day that can just happen. So I just felt that was my best option, and it's tactical as well. Like I knew, like Emil, I knew Mohammed, I knew Mark were going to turn up at London, and there's other guys who could have ran the time at Seville, and if they had done, and they'd taken one or two of the Olympic spots, then suddenly you're going to the London Marathon and you've got to beat Emil, Mohammed, and Mark, and that's a lot easier said than done. So to me, I thought, well, actually, why don't I be one of the guys who runs the time at Seville, gets the earlier selection, and then I don't have to worry about the London Marathon, and kind of going head to head there. So you have to be strategic with these things, and that's why the earlier we get selection policies, like definitely the better. So then you can make these decisions and put yourself in the best possible position.
Yeah, I know that's a thing a lot of people have pushed for over recent years, is those selection policies being made earlier so people understand them a bit better, or not that they understand them better, but they have more time to plan. And I think, yeah, it is an important point. As you say, you could make more educated decisions and realize what's best for you in the build up, so that not only could you go and have a crack at the time, but if you get the time, it also gives you a bit more time to then recover and go again. Because if you make the team, you obviously then got eyes on the Olympics, which thankfully you did. So Seville went well. How was it, and what was that feeling like when you crossed the line?
It was amazing, honestly. It was a weird one. I'd been out to Kenya, done like 4 weeks of training there. It was really, really hard. Training was really tough. Training with the marathon group that Renato's got out there with Emil. And yeah, it was tough. That was a tough camp. I didn't feel really good until right at the end. Really struggled through, had a bit of a back injury, and it didn't stop me running. It just made things pretty uncomfortable. But I knew that, like, I was almost in shape to do it at the time at Valencia. So all I was thinking was, I'm just adding like an altitude stimulus on top of that fitness. So that should carry me over the line with the fitness. And kind of got to Seville, and it was a weird one. I travelled out on my own, like no partner, no coach, no agents. Just went out, sharing a room with Kev Quinn, which was nice, a friendly face. Just kept me really relaxed, and just went for it in the race. Felt good. got to about 35k and felt our group of about 30, 40 guys was splintering, and saw about 5 or 6, 7 guys kind of pushing on, and realised, had flashbacks to Valencia and said, like, they're the guys who run the time today. Like, that's 100%. Everyone else is faltering here. They're the guys who are going to run the time. So just got on them and felt pretty good for a few more K, and was like, this is happening today. And then 39, 40k, just legs just started coming off, and I just thought, oh my god, I'm going to miss this by a couple seconds. And I'm looking at my watch and I'm tracking the splits really closely, and I'm thinking I'm literally going to be like a second or two out of this. And just said to myself, just give it absolutely everything. Just don't hold anything back. There won't be a single like excuse. There won't be, I wish I just tried harder at a little bit at that point or anything. And yeah, the clock froze a couple of times down the home straight, so I really didn't know until just as I was going under it that I was about to run the time, and then I did. And yeah, it was an unbelievable feeling. Just really kind of surreal that I've trained for years. I've sacrificed quite a lot. Like, I love it, but there's still things that you sacrifice, and definitely, like, my partner Jess and my friends and family have sacrificed a bit and been really understanding and supportive of me. So kind of, yeah, achieving that was, yeah, really, really special, and kind of felt like it was kind of a justification for kind of all of that, really.
Well, it's spine tingling, it really is. It's like, yeah, when you describe it, it's almost like you're there, and you can picture it, and then little bits of anticipation as well, where the clock's freezing and just adding to the moment, but it makes it all that bit sweeter, I bet, when you cross the line. So yeah, well done, mate. It's from my perspective, I think I actually commented on the day. It's just actually really nice to see, because having raced against you over the years, and to see the hard work, the dedication that goes in it, it makes you realize that it can happen to normal people. Sometimes we put people on a pedestal in this sport, and we think, oh, maybe I can't get to the Olympics. But for me, it really demonstrated that if you keep consistent, if you stick with it, if you believe in your dreams, and yeah, you get a bit of luck along the way, like, you can get there. And I think a lot of people resonated with your journey. And I could see that from the comments on social media. A lot of people have taken inspiration from it as well. So I know you'll inspire a lot of people in the future, to keep going and go after their dreams. Yeah. But it's certainly not over for you yet. You've still got many more miles in the legs, I assume. So, yeah. To kind of round things off, I guess, and where things are now. Firstly, how was that Olympic experience? It looked mental, because I just kept seeing people from Leeds on the TV. It was like everyone was on the course.
No, it was amazing. Yeah, I had loads of friends come out to watch, loads of people from Leeds and training partners and old club mates and Blackheath, and just people come out and watch who have been part of this from different stages. And that was really special and really fun. Loads of family came out, and the experience was amazing. Yeah, the village is really surreal. It's very different to kind of being at the European Champs or those internationals that I have done, and yeah, just completely different stage, really. And so that was really special. And I was very much, performance was still first and foremost. I wanted to run as best I possibly could, and I prepared as well as I could. And but I also wanted to really absorb the experience and enjoy that. And you don't know if it's going to happen again. You hope it does. But it was really hard to get there once, so I assume it's going to be just as hard, if not harder, to get there again. So I just really wanted to take it all in and just enjoy it.
Oh, good on you, mate. Yeah, good on you. It's been quite the year from Seville to the Olympics. It's hard to even think they're in the same year, but they were, and it seems such a long time ago, but then it doesn't at the same time. But Seville, the Olympics, and then a big family change as well. I imagine it's just been a very, very special year in the Sesemann household.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. Yeah, it's been really good. Yeah, with my partner, us having a little baby girl about 6-7 weeks ago now. So yeah, that's just been amazing. Absolutely loving it, and it will definitely make changes to my approach to training, and less camps for sure, and just being at home a lot more, and just really kind of back to embracing kind of home training camp kind of lifestyle, and just really kind of leaning into that a lot.
Well, it's not a bad place to have a training camp with the amount of talent and stuff around there. So I'm sure they can get used to having daddy at home and around for a little bit longer.
No, it's not bad. It's pretty good here.
And I guess, just to finish off, Phil, what is next for you then? Is there another marathon lined up where people can watch you?
Yeah, I expect I'll be lining up at London in April. Quite looking forward to kind of getting stuck back into the next marathon, and then would love to be at the World Champs next year. There's just something about racing in Japan that they're marathon fanatics over there, and really want to kind of get to that World Champs to be there. And in the short term, I'm going to jump into the Telford 10K in 3 weeks' time, and 2 weeks I'm going to jump into a 3,000 race just to kind of sharpen the legs a little bit in Sheffield. So
nice.
A few little races, and then hopefully some big races next year.
Good old Northern Indoors, I believe. Is that
Northern Indoor Open? Yeah. Not even indoor and indoor champs.
Nice.
So it'd be good fun.
See, never too big for the open meets. Yeah, that's what I love about this sport. It brings all the best out.
You want to run out, so it's going to have to be.
There you go. Well, best of luck, Phil. Thanks again for joining us. And where can people follow your journey? I know you have a lot of social presence, but where are you most prominent on social media so they can follow your journey for the rest of 2024 and into 2025?
It's probably Strava, to be honest. Yeah, I'm on Instagram, posting semi-regularly kind of thing, but Strava's everything's up there. So if you actually want to see what I get up to, you can see all the training on there.
Yeah, you're quite open on Strava, so much so I actually remember when you had that camper van and you were doing trips around, so I was like, this is mental, where's he going next?
It was too much. I was knackered. I think that was why the training, I was fried all the time, so while the racing was going terrible. I'm trying, if anyone wants to buy a camper van, I'm selling it.
Oh, well, we're still getting ours fixed, so I'm not in the market for one yet, but it might be if it doesn't come out the other end, so maybe in touch. Oh, Brill. Well, I've absolutely loved that, Phil. Genuine pleasure. Wishing you the best of luck for the rest of 2024. I may see you at some of the races. Are you going to Battersea as well on New Year's Eve or not? So. 5K? No. So just the 3K, then the 10K. So. Well, yeah, hope they go well, and best of luck for London in the new year. And I'm sure our audience will be there to support you along the way. I hope they've enjoyed it as much as I have. As always, thanks for tuning in. If you have tuned in, and I hope you have enjoyed it, we'll see you all again out on the roads, the trails, the track, and hopefully a marathons in 2025 as well. Cheers, Phil, and thanks everyone for tuning in.